This is a message from your guides reading for the Andromedan star being. Okay, so I have 3 crystals here. I'm going to go ahead and surround us in some positive space with my rose quartz. Okay, I got a spider crawling on the floor over here. That's why I keep looking down on the ground. So I don't know if that's a totem animal for you, or maybe it's for me. I don't know, but here are the other two. I'll ask about that in a second, but here's the other two. So this is my sodalite and my zoisite, and these are 2 group stones, and the other one is the one that I pulled for you, the rose quartz. So rose quartz is about harmony and feeling comforted. It's about emotional healing when it comes to every aspect of yourself, also the way that you view yourself, the way that you feel about yourself, the way that you feel about others. Okay, and then sodalite has to do with speaking your truth, expressing yourself, divine communication. So expressing your authentic self, also setting boundaries when that's what's needed, and then also mental focus and mental clarity, um, grounding, shifting your perspective. That's another thing coming in. So then I have my zoisite here. So zoisite is all about abundance, being open to all forms of abundance and sort of any way that abundance can show up for you, any way that abundance can express itself or come through. So different experiences can be looked at in different ways. So any experience holds abundance for you. It doesn't matter what the experience is. So you might have a certain view, or you might have a certain way that you're wanting something to go, or you're seeing something as going. But at the same time, you can't block. Um, you don't want to block any doors. In other words. So you have to allow abundance to come however it may. So the spider, though, tends to have to do with destiny. It has to do with our destiny, what we are creating, because the spider is weaving a web. So in that sense, it talks about us being creators, our creative aspect. Another thing about spiders is their patience. That's another thing about the spider totem. The patience that they have, they're willing to wait, they're willing to allow things to manifest. Um, but there's also patience when it comes to allowing yourself to process through different things and through different shifts, whether they are around you or they're within yourself. It feels like a lot is shifting right now. There's still this cockroach totem. So I don't know what's going on with your house. I don't know if that was fixed or what. But either way, even if that's already been fixed, I still feel like this totem animal is kind of looming there. So that isn't over with yet. And it does feel like your grounding is a bit in the air. Okay, but I just feel like it's kind of occurring to me that what they're saying um, about abundance and being open to abundance in all ways and different ways and not being stuck like something has to come to me in this specific way or something has to happen in this specific way for me to um, perceive it in a way that's abundant in a sense or in a way that benefits me or can serve me. But I'm realizing this can kind of be taken in multiple ways. So this can be a yes or a no to your question. So I mean, this could be. I mean, I'm sure you can see how this can be saying saying either thing here. So I'm going to see if they'll be a little bit more specific. But okay, there's also this idea of allowing things to unfold though in the way that they're going to. And that's one thing that the spider has to do with as well. There is a plan, but in other words, like a divine plan, and maybe the spider doesn't see the whole thing. The spider is waiting for the fly to come to it, but the spider isn't necessarily seeing the fly. It could be another insect, not necessarily a fly that comes. So in other words, the spider doesn't know exactly what's going to land in its web. Doesn't know exactly what it's going to attract to itself or exactly what's going to happen. It just patiently waits for it and it allows it. So it's very difficult to be patient sometimes and um, to cultivate patience. And it's very difficult to feel at peace sometimes when you're not knowing what's going to happen. But it feels like sometimes it's better to not know. Sometimes that's a test for you. So I feel like this can be looked at in either way. I don't feel like they're being really specific, which I know is going to be frustrating. So I would rather that they were just being much more specific with the reading. But they're just not. I don't feel like they want to give a really specific answer. What they want to say is to allow things to unfold, and know that they're meant to be that way. They're meant to be the way that they're unfolding. that there is a divine purpose to things. There's also divine timing to things. And it is important to let go of things needing to be a specific way and also at a specific time. Some things happen in a different way or in a different time, but the same thing still happens. It also seems like sometimes things prove harder than we thought that they were going to be because they're more challenging. That's also a thing about the cockroach that I remember from reading that totem during your last reading. It was going on and on about challenges, but also rising to the challenge. But it feels like the main thing is healing within, focusing on your inner self, not giving up on your dreams, not giving up on your hopes or your aspirations. It feels like sometimes things don't happen in the exact way that you thought that they were going to. Okay, so but one thing it feels like is they don't want you to have some huge accumulation of debt. Like you're going to have this huge surmounting debt, which it doesn't feel like you're going to be able to pay off so quickly. It almost feels like it's going to be this kind of weight kind of tied to your ankle that's kind of pulling on you or tugging you. And it just almost makes you heavier. It makes you more sluggish. It makes you more tied to certain things. It kind of feels like why do you need to be in a certain location um, to do certain things or achieve certain things? On the one hand, it feels that way, but then on the other hand, um, it doesn't feel like they're giving that as a definite. It does feel like almost like that's more likely with the how do you say that with the momentum of energy, where the energy is headed. It feels like certain things are more likely um, with the way that the present energy is heading towards. But okay, so it also feels like okay. So let's say that that's the scenario that happens. So let's say that's the scenario that happens. You end up going back. You end up not staying. So you're going to feel really negatively about it, obviously. But one good thing would be that you wouldn't have debt. This feels like a temporary thing. If this were to happen, it feels like it would be temporary. It feels like you would end up going back to the same location that you're at now. They don't mean like living in the same place. They mean like uh, the same country or the same state. So they're saying that if that were to happen, it would be very temporary. You would still have a goal. You wouldn't have all the debts. There's also something about it being U.S. debt. I don't know why. Um, Almost like that's a worse debt to have. I don't know if it's interest or almost like something having to do with the way that US handles things. But it does feel like um it feels like you're going to end up staying here though. Where you're at now. So I know that sounds confusing. So in other words, either way, let's say you end up staying where you're at now, um, and you don't end up going back, or let's say that you go back, either way, it feels like you're going to end up back in the state, as in the state where you're living, not like emotional mental state. They mean like the physical state um, of the U.S., the physical state of the U.S. that you're in. Feels like you're gonna end up back there. So it almost okay. It almost feels like you need to open yourself to other ways of being able to live there, or other ways to permanently be in the country. And what is the easiest way, or is there another way to do it? So it feels like looking at other options, not being stuck on a specific way for it to happen. It feels like the best way is a different way. I don't know exactly what way that would be, but I don't feel like you would have so much debt. That's one thing kind of on their minds. That's one thing that they keep sending is the amount of debt. It does feel like there are other ways. It feels like you can think of some, you can be made aware of some, but it also feels like you need to be open to the ways open to the possibilities and not close off to any of the others that are there. Like there's even, not that this is necessarily it, but just as a for instance, there's even the idea of a company hiring you or something like that. Um, there are different, and then they would need you obviously to work there and be there, and so you would end up able to stay. So there's different ways to go about it than only one option or only one way to do it. Okay. There's something though about there's something about this feeling more long term though. And also you developing patience. And it feels like though, okay, there's this feeling almost like there isn't a quick fix. Like this would almost seem like a quick fix, but they're saying that it would end up, you would end up having this, um, like they said, large accumulation of debt that would end up feeling like a setback later on. But it feels like the thing is, because okay, you might be thinking, oh, okay, by the time I need to pay that off, I'll have it, I'll be able to, da da da. If that were the way that things were meant to go, then that would be fine. But it feels like, especially with the issue of grounding that is already kind of present in your energy field, it feels like when you add all this kind of debt, it almost feels like it makes things heavier. It makes things heavier and it slows things down. There's now all this energy to kind of mire through going forward. And so it doesn't end up speeding things up. And so it doesn't end up being a quick fix anyway, it feels like. And then you just end up with this big pile of debt and probably not being able to do what you wanted to do in the first place, which is stay permanently. Whereas the other way might take a little bit more time, but you would end up there permanently, and also without all of the debt. It feels like some things can be a little bit harder to manifest when there are lessons to learn. And it just doesn't feel like it doesn't really feel like there's a quick um, way, not like a really quick way. It feels like there are quicker ways and there are slower ways, and all of them are equally valid, but it doesn't feel like this one happening overnight is. It doesn't really feel like this is going to work, but this feels like a almost form of protection. It actually feels like a sense of them not allowing something. It doesn't, and this doesn't just feel like them. I mean, this feels like you. Not you consciously now on this end, but a part of you, like a higher version of yourself, it doesn't feel like is going to allow something that is kind of going to cripple you in the future, even though it doesn't seem like it now, to certain other aspects of yourself. It wouldn't seem that way only because you're not seeing the effect that it would have energetically. Obviously, anything is possible, but it also has to do with how things, it has to do with meant as well. It, it just feels like there are certain things that you will allow, um, on other deeper levels, on higher levels of yourself, and certain things that you wouldn't allow. And going against that energy makes things heavier, it makes things slower. But it's not only that, it just doesn't feel like this is like the best way or the most beneficial way, even if it would seem like it now. So it feels like this is a certain perspective. It feels like there are going to be some thought forms that get upset or want to kind of yell or whatever. They're also saying that, okay, so then there is this like slim, um, obviously that isn't the only energy present. That's the kind of dominant energy present, the main energy. It's the most probable energy, in other words. So there's another energy that's less probable that it, where you end up not going back, or you end up able, to stay temporarily and permanently, um, versus just permanently. But it doesn't, it feels like it doesn't really involve what you're thinking of right now. And it doesn't involve, um, debt, or at least not this amount, not a really high amount. If it were to involve that, it wouldn't involve a really high amount. It would involve a doable amount, and an amount that wouldn't, make everything almost more heavy or more sluggish. Either way, though, you're going to end up getting the thing that you want. It's just in either of these directions, it's just not going to come in the exact way that you're thinking of, for certain reasons that you wouldn't allow and that you wouldn't want in the future. Right now, it would seem like, oh, thank goodness, but then it would actually slow everything down. and you would end up with debt. But they're just saying that debt isn't a good energy, especially that kind of amount. They're just saying that it isn't a good energy. It's a very heavy energy and it slows things down. So that's just debt kind of in general. And you would kind of have that looming over your present energy going into the future. Okay, so that is all that they have to say for this reading. So thank you very much for allowing me to do this reading for you. As always, I truly hope that it benefits you. Thank you very much. Namaste.